here at HQ. Oh, thanks, Lisa. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've made it. It's week 5 of the Level Up program. And we've got another action-packed session. And in fact, we've got a couple of guests coming in today. Ross and Will are going to join us a little bit later. But first, as always, and I hope this really is becoming part of a daily routine, or maybe if you're running meetings at work and so on, let's give our brains some love and celebrate some mini wins from the week. So who'd like to just flick their mic on and share a mini win or a massive win from the last week?
I was going to say my mini win was surviving COVID, so that was my mini win.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, I haven't been able to do too much of the exercise activities because I've been sort of unwell, so I haven't really given it too much thought, unfortunately, this week. So.
No, that's all right. No, it's that's life, isn't it? Life throws us things we have to deal with, and we'll talk a little bit about that anyway in terms of how we can factor it into the coming week. But no, thanks for sharing, and let's take that as a massive win. Who else would like to share something?
I've been mostly working from home, but in my efforts to be more active, I've been walking around in the house, but as I go, I pick up everything after other people. So the house is a lot tidier. Mini win and active.
No, well done. Absolutely. It's at the end of the day, it's a mini win. We have to celebrate them for sure. For sure we do. Who else would like to share?
Yep, I've been active, I guess. I've managed in the break in the weather. Mowed the lawn, and I put the little the steps meter on my phone, and I found out when I'm doing the lawn, I do about nearly 2 or 3 Ks walking. I didn't even realise. So it's I'll do more of that when I'm mowing the lawn.
Yeah, fantastic. That's a great example of increasing your NEAT, isn't it? I mean, I guess the lawn it won't cut itself, so it's kind of something that's got to be done. But nonetheless, even I mean, I thought about this only last week actually when after the masterclass. I thought actually I kind of let the grass get to a certain length, and I thought actually if I just kept it a bit shorter, it would look nice. But also it gets me just moving an extra time of pushing the mower around. So that actually was for me was one of a little mini win really. It's like, oh, excellent! I found another way of increasing my NEAT. But that's a perfect example. And it's funny when you start tracking anything like that. It's quite interesting to see the numbers. I mean, often my device will sort of vibrate on my arm and I look down. I'm not even thinking about my step count because I have a pretty active lifestyle. But it's interesting. It's every time I go up a set of stairs or a hill, it seems to be counting that. And it will give me a little, yay, well done, you've hit your goal, even though I didn't set a goal. It set a goal. But it kind of feels good. You go, oh, excellent. There you go. Tiny mini win right there. And so, I mean, as we know, what gets measured gets managed. All right, good. Now, homework last week we know was to share NEAT commitment in Basecamp. Now, I noticed that everyone's been very, very busy and didn't have the chance to do that perhaps, but I really would encourage you to do so. And it can literally just be scroll down on a piece of paper, take a photo, whack it in there. It's really important that when we make a commitment like that and we share that commitment, albeit we're sharing it in a very, very private group that's not accessible to anyone in the outside world, it somehow makes us even more accountable to it. And it helps us to sort of think about it even more. So I really would encourage you after today's masterclass just to share that in there. And I'm going to do the same. I'm going to share my NEAT commitment. And I think that was something Lisa and I were talking about before we went live today, is that, there can be value in that as well, because it's not that I've got all of my shit in a pile. Not at all. It's an ongoing process. And like my example with cutting the grass a little more regularly, that's a way I can increase my NEAT. So it never stops. We never stop looking for it. I know that some of you have been under the weather and so on. I really would encourage you to get one of these MVP movement sessions done. And I just wanted to be really clear that you don't have to do it on video with your buddy. You can just take a photograph of being online, or take a photograph of each other, of yourselves, and share that and so on. If for some reason it's not convenient or you're not comfortable doing it on video with your buddy, that's fine. You don't have to, not at all. But remember, for everyone that does share a photograph, for each pair that do that and sort of say, yep, we did it, it was great, or not, whatever, we are going to pay for a call at Lifeline. So I'd like to extend that for the next week, and give you all the chance to get that squared away, because we really would like to pay for some more calls at Lifeline. But again, we'll come through there. And the other part of home was to track your sleep. Now I'm interested, if we see a quick show of hands, or anyone that wants to jump in, did anyone, this whole power down routine and so on, did anyone see any real results, or were there any insights from tracking your sleep more closely? Anyone want to share there?
Well, I found what I eat during the day definitely influences my sleep. So if the meal is not as balanced, which we tend to do, Sunday evenings is usually just a quick sandwich or whatever, but then I really find that I don't sleep. I have a really restless night. And yeah,
that's really
it's logical,
insight,
but it's just more accentuated, I guess, with having to pay attention with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really powerful insight, because anything we can do to improve the quality and duration of our sleep is so important. And for sure, what we eat and drink can have a really profound impact on those two sort of benchmarks, if you like, the quality and duration. So that's awesome. So and as well, to start to really get a feel for the relationship of what we're doing or what we're consuming and the impact of that on our sleep. That's awesome. Thank you, Sinead. Anyone else? Any insights or observations from being more aware of tracking sleep?
I found after last week, okay, so I've got an Achilles heel. I do like to have, I buy it for the kids, but say Cyclone Ice Block, high sugar, shouldn't have it, I don't care, whatever, we enjoy it. Anyway, the 2 nights I had that before bed, I had the worst sleep, and I was like, hang on, is this a coincidence that I've had some high sugary before going to sleep, that I was waking up for an hour, 3 a.m., 4 a.m. So I did that for 2 nights, happened twice in a row. Then the next nights I didn't have any treat, haven't had an issue with sleep. So I'm thinking, I'm actually kind of curious to experiment whether or not the sugar levels have impacted or spiked or have an impact on my sleep. But also last week was a shocking week. It was like a really difficult week. So I don't know if it's correlated with the fact that I've had a shit week and I couldn't sleep properly. So I still got like pretty good hours, but like I've got my little sleep tracker thingy. Yeah, and over the week, it was still like between 7 hours sleep, which is pretty good. But I was still awake from like 3 to 4 a.m. and stuff like that.
Yeah, a bit of broken sleep, which affects the different cycles of the sleep are then affected and so on. That's awesome, to be honest, Lauren. The fact that you sort of now are connecting. Well, all right, there's something very specific. And I'd be really interested to see how that plays out for you, because you say that there are lots of other things, and if it was generally a bit of a shit week anyway, was it all of that, or was it, and it's not that there's any silver bullet here. It could be that the sugary treat, as you're calling it, and I'll come back to that, whether that was just one piece of the puzzle or not. But the fact that you're trying, you have that awareness, oh, hang on a minute, 2 crap nights sleep, and what did I do leading into those nights sleep? Well, okay, maybe I try not consuming that for a few days and see if that has any effect. It's just trial and error, right? I took caffeine out of my diet 4 or 5 years ago in a bid to sleep better. I don't really sleep better. So have I put caffeine back in? No, I haven't. But I'm not sure that caffeine, I was never one of those people where I'd have a coffee and ding, I could feel like, wow, okay, it's had an effect. But everything does have an effect at the end of the day. One way to think about that, by the way, is my wife, Ned, she'll talk about having a treat at night. And that's all good. And it's nothing to, not demonizing that in any way. But if you think about the language of that from a neuroscience perspective, it's a treat, it's a reward, it's a good thing. And yeah, with Ned, I mean, yeah, for sure, anyone who knows my wife would know she can eat whatever she wants, whenever she wants. I have no opinion about that. But she has now reframed it in terms of, well, okay, it feels nice, but is it a treat in that sense? Because it somehow validates it and justifies it and makes it feel good. And I also wish chocolate and those things were health foods and superfoods, and the more we ate, the better we'd be. So maybe if it helps you to, if it is affecting your sleep, if it is, then maybe it helps that craving, that love and that desire. And I have this, I've got a sweet tooth as well. If it helps to make it easier to not have that every night, or not so close to going to bed, for example, and trying to sleep, then reframing it as not a treat, but as something else. So it's something I want. And if I want it, I can have it, but is it going to serve me? And thinking about it that way, rather than, well, it's a treat. Yeah, I have it today to block at night or whatever
I
it
think
is.
that you hit the nail on the head, because I'm currently like, on a side note, looking at my relationship with food, and you're right. That's something I've noticed I do. And I'll eat quite a really well balanced diet, but that to me is like, I think your willpower's low by the end of the night. I don't drink during the week. That's one thing I can't replace drinking, like having a glass or 2 or 3 at night with a treat. Yeah. So that for me was the thing that helped look at the neuroscience about it. And I agree that relationship with food and rewarding yourself with that treat is maybe not the right language. So thank you.
Yeah, no, not at all. No, I appreciate you being receptive to that. Absolutely. And hey, we're all a work in progress, that's for sure. And I felt pretty ropey on Monday morning, let me tell you. We had a weekend away, and it was a rare mini blowout on Sunday night, and it reminded me of why I don't tend to do that very much anymore, because fun though it was, it impacted my whole Monday, driving back from Jindabyne. Good. All right. Look, thank you for the share. I really appreciate the discussion around it. That was our homework. So let's have a look at what we're going to be doing today. In the spirit of what we always do at the beginning of these sessions, I'd like to introduce you to another breathing technique, which I think you're going to love. It's called the prana technique. And I tend to introduce this one towards the end of the program, as it can feel a bit more demanding, but it's still super simple. And I personally find that I get a deeper experience when I use this, as it makes me focus longer and causes a bit more of a response to my autonomic nervous system, which is a good thing. Now, look, like all breathing techniques and guided meditations, I recommend doing 20 minutes. That's kind of optimal. I also don't do 20 minutes every day. I certainly do 10 minutes of guided meditation, but 20 is kind of optimal. And I also am working towards making it sort of 20 minutes every day, but work in progress. But today we're going to do an introductory 3-minute session together now that you can get familiar with it. And then we can cruise our way through the rest of today's masterclass, feeling amazing. And for sure, having a great chat with Will and Ross. Okay, as always, we'll do this together, and I'll start you off with the rhythm so that you can then continue counting to yourself and really just allow yourself to be immersed in the technique. And I'll start talking again as we approach the 3-minute mark. So in short, this technique involves breathing through the nose, only through the nose, but as always, nice, deep, diaphragmatic breath. So we're breathing from the belly. And if it helps to pop a hand on the stomach as we're doing this so you can feel it going in and out, then please do so. And look, our count will be an 8-second inhale. Well, it won't be quite 8 seconds, but I'm going to count to 8. Inhale through the nose, and then we're going to exhale for 10, a count of 10. Now, look, if you find that a little bit challenging, then you can make it 6 and 8. So 6 inhale, 8 exhale, whatever feels comfortable for you. But that's the cycle. We'll go for a count of 8, inhale, and a count of 10, exhale. All right, thumbs up if everyone is ready to give this a go. All right, so certainly sitting nice and comfortably, feeling nice and relaxed. Going to take a deep reset breath in through the nose, just a normal breath, nice deep breath in through the nose. And as you exhale through your nose, just if you haven't already, close your eyes. And now we're going to start. We're going to take an inhale through the nose for a count of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And exhaling for a count of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And again, in through the nose for a count of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And exhaling nice and gently through the nose for a count of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And now just keeping that rhythm, counting to yourself. If at any stage you lose count, no stress, just exhale and start again with the inhale. Right, and when you're ready, in no rush at all, just on your next exhale, gently opening your eyes and just take a moment to absorb how that feels. Maybe we had a shit week last week, or we had a bit of stress this morning already, and we've just felt that melt away at the end of the day. Very good. What do you think of that technique? A little bit more challenging? Yeah, but that's good. In terms of triggering the autonomic nervous system, that's having that response is really quite powerful, and very focusing, of course, having to count that way. Good. So now we're ready to take it into the rest of today's session. All right, let's go there. Good. So we've done a bit of guided meditation. What I'm going to do is introduce you to the 7 pillars of performance. I like to bring them in at this stage by way of explaining how what you've been doing for the last 5 weeks is underpinned by neuroscience and helps to reinforce why you should keep, well, I hope you keep doing these sort of new daily and weekly routines. I mean, let's face it, peak performance isn't something that you just do on a short course of 5 weeks. Yep, tick the box and then move on. I mean, it's a life work, literally. So let's quickly recap the journey we've been on so far together. All right, right back at the beginning, you were introduced to the Life Radar. Hopefully you've got a copy of that with you today, the one that you completed. And the design of that is to figure out which levers you need to pull to have the most impact in your life. You were also connected to your accountability buddy. And many of you I know have really leaned into this and reaped the benefits of it. And I really do encourage you to continue on supporting each other beyond this program. And actually, I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but it may be a different rhythm in the future, such as, you know, maybe once a week. It doesn't have to be twice a week, but setting a no-fail goal each week and being held accountable is really, really powerful. We also then had a look at the power of contribution, as you know, in our case, through paying for calls at Lifeline. And then we took a deep dive into developing our massively transformative purpose. Now, history tells me that a percentage of you didn't make the time to work further on that since that masterclass. And that's okay, because some of you have. And today I'm going to help reframe the importance of your purpose. And Ross will help us do that as well in everything that we do. And we'll encourage you to go back to the massively transformative purpose just for yourself and for your own benefit, because it's so powerful. And of course, you do have time to focus on these really important topics as you clawed back time by changing your relationship with certain technologies, changing habits around technologies such as your phone. And I know that some of you have made some really profound changes, and it warms my heart to know that you'll continue those on, hopefully indefinitely. All right, what else have you been up to? Of course, like we've just done, we've been building active recovery techniques into your life in the form of box breathing, guided meditation, maybe for some of you saunas. Give me a thumbs up, Brendan. Did you find a sauna? Didn't get one. No, okay. I'll come back to you on that. Massage, mindfulness sessions, and of course, cold showers. Come on, who's still doing the cold showers? Anyone? They're so powerful, but I understand. All right, what else have we been doing? We talked about sleep, and actually talking about sleeping like your life depends on it. And we mapped out some of the behaviors we could change or add to try and increase the duration and quality of our sleep. And you started, I hope, to work on your power down routine. We also talked about tracking your sleep, as we talked with Lauren today and Sinette shared. It was homework from last week, and I know, yeah, clearly some of you are already and have started tracking your sleep. It's often kind of easy, to be honest, with tracking sleep, because some of these modern devices, they kind of do the heavy lifting for us anyway. The Apple Watch and the Garmin's and all those different devices, they're kind of doing it anyway. So it's really being about mindfulness around looking at the numbers, and as Lauren and Sinette shared, just trying different things to see what's impacting the quality and duration of their sleep. And then, of course, last week we introduced the idea of your NEAT with Will, and certainly talked about ways, got you thinking about ways you could increase your NEAT. And look, it's another never-ending game. So always be on the lookout for how to increase your NEAT and gamify it, make it a bit of fun. And of course, let's not forget the idea of movement as a lifestyle and the development of your MVP of movement. Now I'm going to come back to that when the guys join us. So let's not dive into a feedback round on that just yet, because we'll be getting to that. And importantly, what we've been doing is creating this sense of community. Now, obviously, we use Basecamp to do that, and we deliberately don't use social media. Basecamp for us has proven to be a really effective way of doing it. And many of you have been digging into Basecamp, and for that, yeah, thank you. And when you signed up to Level Up, look, you each had your reasons, and the purpose of the program, look, it's a 5-week sprint, if you like, to work on productivity and ultimately start moving towards peak performance. It's designed to get you implementing some new behaviors and maybe getting you back into some others. As I say, clawing back time, creating some freedom, establishing some new healthier lifestyle behaviors, and starting to prioritize how you live your life. And we all know it's a crazy busy world, and it's so easy to lose sight of what it's all about. And as we traverse life, we all get gremlins, or you have gremlins that can creep up on us. They cause us to doubt ourselves. They're sitting on the pillow next to us, just waiting until we wake up at 3 a.m. And Lauren, I was interested, you mentioned the 3 till 4. That's my classic 3 o'clock. I wake up and for sure there's gremlins sitting on the pillow, whispering my worries or insecurities into my ears. And I think it's the same for a lot of us. And the reason they're amplified at that time in the morning is because we don't have the normal distractions of life to help drown them out. So they feel like they're amplified. And then when you wake up in the morning, those things that have been bothering you during the night, they feel smaller somehow and more manageable again. You see, the reality is, if you've already got what it takes to kick the door of life off its hinges, we all do, you've already got it. And what we've been doing over the last 5 weeks, it may feel like we've just been loading you up with new stuff on top, kind of adding more things on top, but that's not it actually. And when we talk about unleashing potential, it's true. And you may recall the Michelangelo example with his statue David. And as you've heard me say before, when Michael created David, he started with a massive piece of marble and he chipped away at it to create this incredible piece. So he didn't take a bunch of pieces of marble and stick them together. He actually uncovered David by removing the excess marble. And the same is true when we think about ourselves. And certainly here in Level Up, it's not about adding things on top to reach our goals. It's about removing the excess, the stuff that's weighing us down, and therefore releasing and unlocking the potential that is ultimately lying dormant in all of us. And so what we've been doing for the last 5 weeks is kick-starting that process. And we've been using the 7 pillars of performance as the basis. Actually, it's the basis for everything we do, and I'll explain. Whoops, I've got a sticky button at this end. Hang on, bear with me. Yeah, interesting. Bear with me, sticky buttons. All right, we're back on track. All right. Oh, hey, Ross. How you doing, mate? Good to see you. So everyone hits a flat spot. Nobody's immune. And all of the elite athletes, the business owners and leaders we work with around the world, they all say the same thing, that at some stage their performance drops off. They hit a glass ceiling, or as we call it, the performance plateau, because, well, that's the net result. Our performance just kind of levels out or fades a little. And actually hitting this performance plateau is predictable, inevitable even. And there are some really common symptoms that I'm going to go through now. And actually we've zeroed in on what we'd like to call the 3 big problems that we see most commonly. And maybe you'll be able to relate to some of these. But the first often leads to lowered motivation and less energy. And it's frankly being busy all the time. And it's something that we talked about at the beginning of Level Up. And it's so easy to end up feeling like you're on a hamster wheel, kind of zooming along, not really getting anywhere. And as you know, we've started you on the journey to clawing back time, creating space and freedom for what matters most. But it takes grit and determination to continue on that journey. And when you're super busy all the time, that nearly always spills over to the second big issue that we see. And that's no longer being clear about why it is you do what you do. And as you know, you've taken the first steps towards understanding your massively transformative purpose. And as you've heard me talk about earlier in this program, the all-important purpose is actually the first of the 7 pillars, and it's huge, but we're going to get to that. And naturally, when our why is not clear, and we're just busy being busy, the third big problem nearly always follows. And as I mentioned already, that is that we stop taking care of ourselves. We find ourselves sliding into some dodgy lifestyle behaviors around technology, for example, around sleep, around what we eat, how we move our bodies or not. I mean, these are the opposite of what we need for health and high performance. And over the last 4 weeks, you've been actively looking to reset some of these behaviors, displacing poor habits for ones that fuel you and enable you to flourish. But how do all of these pieces of the jigsaw come together? That's the million-dollar question. How can you make sense of keeping everything in your life balanced in a way that helps you kick the door of life off its hinges? And frankly, that's where the 7 pillars of performance come in. And we like to think of them as the cornerstones of human health, happiness, and high performance. And given everything you know from the last 4 weeks, it's appropriate that the 7 pillars of performance start with your level of clarity around mission and meaning. I mean, think of your purpose as your superpower, and it's nearly always the starting point for anyone who has hit the plateau. And you now know that people with a clear sense of purpose have crystal clear priorities. The I'm too busy perception can just disappear if you let it. So as purpose is crucial to our health and performance, so is the need to keep learning, to keep mastering new skills, to feed your brain. It keeps you growing. Think about the last 4 weeks again. You've been learning new skills around a whole host of things like active recovery and performance. And as you know, it feels good. And having a sense of control over our own destiny, having autonomy, is an important psychological trigger that motivates the self. And as you've found during this program so far, you have more aspects of your life within your control than perhaps you thought at the beginning. And sometimes it just takes the chance to step back, like in a program such as Level Up, and just remove the white noise to be able to see that. All right, the 4th pillar And look, it doesn't matter how introverted you are, we all need that feeling of being part of a team, of having connection with the humans around us in a community. This is something that our team understand well. Think about the elite athletes and special forces veterans we have, like Commander Steve and Will, who's going to join us, and Felicity and Alethea Boone. They couldn't have operated at the level they did without being part of an integrated team who supported them and held them to high standards. And it's no different for the rest of us. And the next pillar is equally true. If we want boundless energy, then we need quality sleep. We need to eat real food. We need to move our bodies. It gives us the vitality to enjoy life to the max and ultimately get back into bed with what we love. As you know, our lifestyle behaviors are so important for our health and wellness. Something we all know, but somehow these are the first things to get sacrificed when we're zooming around being busy hamsters on the hamster wheel. All right, next. As with autonomy, this is something you have total control over, and that is your attitude or your mindset. As you know now, these are your beliefs that influence how you think, how you feel, and how you behave. If your mindset is out of whack, well, of course, your performance will suffer. And think about the breath work and meditation that we've been doing together and independently throughout the course. They're amazing tools to help combat that. And finally, when you feel your best, you perform at your best. And so many people get bogged down with the white noise that they get out of the habit of unleashing themselves and having some effing fun. When did that happen? When did that become a thing? And you'll remember I asked you at the beginning of the program when you last climbed a tree for the sake of climbing a tree. And the most common answer was years ago, when I was a kid. Well, newsflash, adults can play too, and we should play too. And look, here's the thing. You may be a rock star with 6 out of the 7 pillars. But when I see an athlete lose any one of them, when I see a business professional lose just one of them, well, that's when it starts to slide. But if you get all 7 pillars back on track, you'll blow right through that glass ceiling. And just think about where you are right now. No doubt you've made massive inroads to balancing out your 7 pillars, but are you ticking all of them, or is one of them in a bit of a need of attention, let's say? And actually, I know some of you have done it already, but if you haven't, we're going to be posting the link to our scorecard in Basecamp. It only takes a few minutes. There's no money involved. But what it gives you is a crystal clear score for each of the 7 pillars. It takes the subjectivity right out of it. So keep an eye out for that link. Good. Give me a thumbs up if you're with me so far. Thumbs up. Great. All right. So now you understand the 7 pillars, what the 7 pillars of performance are, how important they are. And ultimately, you've learned a whole bunch of techniques to keep you moving close to keeping, let's say, all of the plates spinning, these 7 pillars. And, you know, life, it can feel a bit overwhelming sometimes, and that's totally natural. But you can always bring it back to a very important anchor that we've talked about. And that's 168. And as you know, that's how many hours there are in a week. And time is the most common symptom I hear people talk about, that they're too busy, they're busy all the time. And if you think about this program, it's just 90 minutes a week for 5 weeks. Yet for some, it's been a bit of a struggle to commit consistently. And what about all of those who didn't sign up because they didn't think they had the time? And as you see now, not having enough time is a symptom of not having clarity around your driving purpose, which is ultimately, as you know, the first of the 7 pillars. So if you get clear on your meaning, on your mission, and most of the other things start to fall into place. And that's why we created the Life Radar. It's why we focused you on your massively transformative purpose so early in the program. And I bet if you go back to it now with your renewed sense of clarity and freedom, you'd be able to take bigger steps and advance further than you did just a few weeks ago. Very good. All right. So does all of that make sense? Give me a thumbs up. Excellent. Very good. All right. Now, what I'd like to do, it's always a pleasure to have other members of the team be with us in these masterclasses. And for sure, it's great to welcome once again Will, who is joining us from Bali. Good morning, Will. How are you doing?
Morning, team. How's everyone doing?
We're on fire, Will, on fire. Thank you for being here, mate. And we also have, I've mentioned already, Ross. Ross is someone who helped me understand and explain what had happened in the desert in Arizona in the race across America. I was, as a result of writing the book and developing what is now Level Up and the Impact Project, I was fortunate enough to meet someone who is as we now know is called Ross. Ross keeps himself on the cutting edge of coaching psychology and positive psychology, and specializes in leadership transformation and organizational alignment, as well as peak performance training. And like Will, he's also someone I'm proud to call a friend and an integral member of the Impact Project team. And I'm, again, pleased to say good morning, Ross, and thank you for joining us today.
Morning, Matt. Morning, everyone.
And I'm sorry, guys, I know we're kind of running 5 minutes over. I appreciate you dialing in. We had a really good session at the beginning. It took a bit longer than normal with the Q&A, which I know that you'll expect no apology for. It was fantastic. We had some great sharing about what's been going on over the last week in the relationship of maybe some behaviors or maybe some foods and the impact on sleep, and really some profound insights starting to be developed, which is fantastic. Now, Will, last week we introduced the challenge to increase our levels of NEAT, and we set everyone the task to design and complete their MVP movement sessions. Now, I know we've had a bit of a lumpy week for a lot of people, even with COVID and so on. So we've actually extended for another 7 days the opportunity for people to get with their buddies and complete either one of their movement MVPs and share that so that we can pay for more calls at Lifeline. But the idea is, of course, that they can never, none of us can ever utter the words, "Oh, I didn't have time to do anything," because we can always make just a few minutes with no equipment and body weight only to do something. Now, normally, Will, I know we'd go through and we'd discuss, well, let's take some of the examples from the last week. What I'd like to do is actually instead, if we think back to the last intake we had, and we had one of the delegates who was a firefighter who took the opportunity of involving a number of the people of his shift, in his shift, and actually took the opportunity of building community and engagement through movement, even though they weren't on level up. And that was certainly great to see. And from your perspective, Will, I mean, movement is a huge part of your life. And I mean, right now, you're on the brink of launching a brand new movement-focused facility, aka a gym, in Bali. And I'm really interested to hear your thoughts about how you're going to use movement to build community even more so in your life, even though you already do with your retreats. Really interested to hear your thoughts around the magic that will occur at what's called Bamboo and will be open in a couple of months.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, movement is a massive part of my life. And I think that, you know, we talked last week about making, you know, movement outside of, you know, using that word instead of training or exercising to make that part of a daily routine. You know, I do some yoga on my own. And one thing that I really like from yoga is they call it a practice. They don't call it a training session or whatever that is. And I think just that wording that goes into it allows people just to still show up without having to be like, fuck, I have to go in and just like kick my own ass for an hour. Because that daunting sense of like, I know this is going to hurt going into it doesn't make it any easier of a barrier of entry to get in. So the biggest thing that we're doing for Bamboo is, you know, our three main pillars that we've established for our business, you know, fitness, food, and connection. Those three things are massive for us. And those also are three of the pillars that we talk about. You know, last week I spoke about those three main things we talk about with our clients is, you know, movement, nutrition, and behaviors, right? And connection kind of goes into that behavior side. I know Ross talked a lot about sleep. We talked a lot about vitamin D last week and all those supporting factors that surround that 60 minutes a day or 30 minutes a day of exercise. Those things are just as, if not more important than the actual movement itself. So as much as I am an advocate for movement, I think understanding that if you spend 30 minutes 3 times a week training, it's 90 minutes. But if the other 23 and a half hours of your day are filled with bad choices or things that are unsupportive of what you're doing, it's not going to help so much, you know. The biggest thing also looking at that these days, especially with COVID and everyone locked down, is the lack of physical connection and just connection in general. Doing things like this, talking over Zoom and Skype and all those things. So finding ways to connect with people in ways that make you genuinely feel good, for me is helpful in creating a physical space when it's not been such a common thing in COVID is something I'm very excited about.
Yeah, thanks, Will. Yeah, perfect, to be honest. I mean, Bamboo, fitness, food, and connection, speaking our language, right? We're well aligned. And Ross, I'd love to bring you in here. You're obviously familiar with the 7 pillars. And if we think about just the MVP of movement, that as a task, if we think about how we relate that to any number of the 7 pillars, such as learning new skills, so developing and designing the MVP, the sense of autonomy around that, the team spirit of doing it with your buddy, obviously energy and vitality are given, mindset around sort of committing to it and delivering it and actually doing it and having some fun with it. I mean, I've just touched on 6 out of 7 pillars, and I'm sure I can make the connection with the 7th. But for you, where does it take you when we think about the MVP and the power of the movement MVP from the perspective of the 7 pillars? Where would you start?
Good question. I would, like you said, it really plays across a lot of the pillars. Where I would start with an MVP around movement is firstly understanding. It comes back to what you said about the purpose and finding meaning in it. So why are we doing the particular type of movement that we're choosing to do? Why are we doing movement in the first place? Why are we here on Level Up? You know, getting to the purpose of why we're doing it in the first place is really, really important. Otherwise, we're just going through the motions. So that kind of sets that whole bigger context, bigger frame of why we're choosing to do it, and also ties into the autonomy piece. So why are we choosing to do it? Not because we should, or not because someone's paying us, or not because someone told us to do it, or it's been mandated. Why are we choosing to do it? And that, as a first port of call, is really, really important. The second part then can be framed by that. So the MVP is what is the first step we can take, but it's really important to understand what the bigger objective is, so that you know first step towards what. With an MVP, it's always with an end in mind. It's the first step towards an end goal. So what is the longer term goal? What are we trying to achieve? What are we striving towards? And therefore, what is my MVP the first step towards, right? So if you think about climbing Everest, it takes multiple days and there's multiple camps and stops along the way, and that is all mapped out and tracked out. You don't just climb Everest, but you also don't just climb to the first base camp and then figure out what to do from there. You know what all the stops are along the way, and you know what the objective at the end is. And of course, taking a step back, you know why you're doing it in the first place. If you didn't, you probably weren't going to be successful. So I would say those two things, and then that allows you to, if you have those points along the way and you know what the MVP is working towards in terms of your movement, make sure that you track the progress against those things and celebrate the wins along the way. That's kind of tracking your progress, tracking your development, tracking your competence, recognizing that you're getting better and celebrating that. And of course, the final piece ties into that, which is get to know each other's goals and tasks and objectives and MVPs, and celebrate with each other, and make sure you help each other set those milestones, and help each other celebrate when you hit them, and help each other track progress along the way. And of course, that's starting to bring in the connectedness piece or relatedness piece, which is a huge part of motivation, but also ties into, one of the pillars. It ties into what Will's talking about with this gym. It's a huge element of how we can build a community of optimal performance.
Yeah, thank you. And certainly, as you know, we as well tied it
Matt,
to Will.
Before you go on a big talk again, I know it's how hard it is to get you to stop talking, which I love. So one thing to tie into what Ross was saying too, and I forgot to mention, when you have that community piece, if you're saying, hey, for example, I want to make sure I train 3 times a week, and I'm going to get a group together of people to do that, the likelihood of you actually adhering to that goal of training 3 times a week and being consistent with it is going to be so much higher when you have other people that are doing it and relying on you. That morning you wake up and you're like, I can't be fucked to go train today. My kids kept me up. I had a crap night's sleep. I was malnourished from the day before and all these things. And then you wake up, like, perfect example, right? I know we're talking about good lifestyle habits and not said I'm in the process of opening a gym. I was on the phone with one of our domain servers last night to get things unlocked and doing certain things. And I was up until 2 a.m. So I went to bed and set my alarm for 5:20 to get up. There's no chance I was getting up at 5:20 this morning to get on to do anything in my day. But I knew I had to get on this call and I really wanted to talk to you guys. So it allowed me to still get up at the time that I normally get up and be on this call. So no matter what it is, it's still important that you have people to lean on when you're not at your best, because not everyone's at their best. And if you think they are, they're either a great actor or they're just able to find mechanisms of support to still be present in certain things. So finding those people to help lift you up when you're not able to, that connection piece is massively important to get you to your goal.
Yeah, thanks, Will. I'm not going to talk for a long time now. No, great point. Thank you. And all I was going to do was, and I know that Ross only has a couple of minutes left with us. Ross, I was just going to tie the paying for calls at Lifeline, this contribution piece that we deliberately build in. I mean, we have it embedded within our business, as you know, but we deliberately build that giving component into the MVP of movement. And the idea, of course, is we're anchoring something that perhaps we're not super excited about doing. We're anchoring it to something that's bigger than us. I'd love you to just speak to that in sort of a couple of minutes you have left.
Yeah, it's a really powerful thing, and it ties into, as you mentioned before, quite a few of the pillars. So being able to connect our actions to a purpose bigger than ourselves, firstly, is it gives greater purpose to what we're doing, right? In terms of bigger purpose, assuming, of course, that what we're doing, the donation to Lifeline, is something that is true to our own values. It therefore gives deeper purpose to what it is we're doing. It ties into the whole theory around meaning as well. Anything we know about finding more meaning in what we do is tied into it being about something bigger than ourselves. So it has to be more than just our own kind of immediate sense of well-being. It has to be about something bigger than ourselves for us to truly take meaning from it. And of course, it also ties into that relatedness and connectedness piece again, because the way you're doing it, you're all contributing as a team towards that Lifeline goal and that bigger purpose. So it's another element that can bring you together as a community and bring those connections and be working towards something bigger than all of yourselves together, which obviously is a huge kind of community element and relatedness element as well.
Yeah, thanks, Ross. I appreciate it. Does anyone have any a question for Ross at all? Put him on the spot, of course, before he ducks out. And appreciate, Ross, you've made the time to be here. Same for Will, of course. Any questions for Ross? Anyone want to fire on their mic and ask a quick question?
Ross, hi. Thank you for coming today. I think one thing I noticed you saying was, what do you feel like the relationship with your personal identity with attach that to your purpose? So one thing I've noticed from the last 5 weeks, for example, is let's use social media usage, for example. I was brought up in a generation with social media, Facebook, even in high school, and now not using that. And I consider myself, I'm not a non-user of social media as much now. Where does identity play really with purpose? Can you see the relationship between the two?
Yeah, hi, Lauren. Good to meet you, and a really, really good question. The way I see personal identity is as a set of inherent values that we hold dear. Our values, our true values, are what guide our decisions and our behavior and our choices through life. And values and purpose is inextricably linked in many ways. Or one way of looking at it is that the purpose is really your most dearly held value in many ways. So I think the two things are really, really linked. And if, you know, when being introspective and reflecting on these things, you definitely want to make sure that the values that you hold dear in life, your self-identity, is very much aligned with what you're articulating or what you're trying to clarify as your purpose. If there's a disconnect there, there's an issue somewhere. Something somewhere is not authentic. And it is a tricky thing because we're full of shoulds, right? I should feel like this, or I should behave like this, or I should be doing this, driven by societal pressure and maybe family pressure or whatever it might be. So it does take quite a lot of time sometimes to kind of sit and reflect and pick through this stuff to get to the values, self-identity, purpose that is authentic. But I think it's a fantastic question because, yes, a great sense check is that self-identity, core values, and your purpose should be very much aligned.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. Great question. Ross, thank you very much. I think you need to jump out, and if that's the case, yeah, thank you on behalf of everyone. And
I'll say goodbye. Thanks, everyone, and always a pleasure, and more than happy to hear from anyone on Basecamp as well. So just reach out. Have a good one.
You're awesome.
Good stuff. Will, I've one last question for you. I'm conscious of your time as well, mate, and as well the need to finish on time at this end as well for everyone who's here. I was interested to hear that obviously you got suboptimal sleep last night just because of workload, but it was motivating for you to get out of bed when your alarm went off and to jump on this call because you wanted to be on the call and you committed to the call. To me, it was a good example that if there's not a single sort of higher purpose, a greater purpose, a massive goal that is literally driving each every day, the ability to just take something for what's tomorrow's motivation. Why am I going to move tomorrow? Why am I? How do you tend to handle that with your clients, or indeed yourself? I mean, you're human as well. How do you tend to handle that when people say that they're struggling with sort of actually doing what they've said they'll do, and I'm going to move tomorrow, or I'm going to get up at a certain time and do a certain thing, but I struggle to do so? How do you tend to coach people around that?
I think it's finding benchmarks, and like Ross was saying, finding wins along the way, because people think just going to train, that's the goal for today, instead of, hey, show up to the gym. And if you just get to the gym today and if you don't train, fine. But you made an effort to get to the gym. And maybe the next day is you get to the gym and you're going to walk on the treadmill if you don't want to do anything. Finding ways to still get people moving and doing things that doesn't inherently force them to do something they don't want to do, but doing things that do help create a habit, right? Just physically going to the gym, even if you turn around and go home, you're still setting a habit in your brain of saying, hey, at this time of the day, I'm meant to go do this thing that I want to do. And depending on lifestyle, you may not want to go train, you may not feel like it. But if you make that progress of going there at the same time every day, eventually your brain's going to kick into gear and you're like, all right, I'm here, let's do something. And it might be a week later, you go walk on the treadmill, right? And that time in the treadmill may be 5-10 minutes, whatever it is. The next week, you still chip away. So it's finding those little milestones and how can you get a little bit more traction and progress toward your goal. Because the thing is, a goal isn't a one, all right, cool, did my goal. There's tons of little things along the way. And once you find what those benchmarks are. So speaking about it from a military perspective, if I know I have a point on a map to get to and it's 10 miles away, if I look at that journey, it can be super daunting, overwhelming, not taking into account the terrain features. Just the distance alone is enough to put somebody kind of, not wanting to do it. But if you find your waymarks, they're called, they're waypoints, you put your waypoints and your benchmarks along the way, and those now turn into mini goals. Instead of looking 10 miles ahead, I'm looking maybe 500 meters ahead. I'm going to establish my step count with my meters to make sure that I'm getting the right steps in and I'm hitting all my waypoints that get me to my benchmarks. And my benchmarks then get me to more waypoints and more benchmarks until eventually I get all the way to that 10th mile. Because if the goal is getting to that 10th mile, that's what a lot of problems that athletes have, a lot of problems that veterans have, especially, right? And Lauren, you just asked Ross about, how do you find your purpose and how do you sort that identity out? Because some people do have identity crisis when elite athletes or Olympians go train for their entire life to win a gold medal, and they finally win a gold medal. Now what? Their whole life has been training to get this one singular medal in this laudatory situation, and they got it. Great, good job. The next day you wake up, now what? You did your goal. Your whole identity was training for Olympic weightlifting in this sport. What do you do now? And when I got out of the military, that was a big part of it. I spent a decade in the US military, and my goal and my sole purpose was to do that. And I did that. When I got out, it was like, all right, cool. Like, now what? Like, now what do I care about? And it took a lot of stripping away at what I thought my why was to figure out what my why actually was. I thought my why when I was in the military was just to go do the things and make people feel good and help people. And later on, when I got out, I was like, well, I'm not helping those people anymore to the same degree. So how do I reshift that? And after a lot of time and soak time and work on myself, I figured, what really drives me as a person, regardless of what I'm doing, is helping people that can't effectively help themselves. And when I take that overarching why, I can apply that to so many things in my life. With fitness, I love fitness, right? It's my passion. But I can take that why that's not fitness related, and then I can take that into a passion that I have. And I can still help people that can effectively help themselves. People that don't know how to lose weight, that don't know what healthy lifestyle habits are, what is nutrition. All these things are things that I can actually help people learn to be better forms of themselves that they want to be. Or you can take that same passion and put it into something outside of the fitness community, and it still applies. So looking at what your why is and stripping it down until it's bare bones, then you can figure out, all right, what is Lauren's purpose and why am I doing this task? Which goes back to what Ross was saying, is why am I choosing to do this thing now?
Yeah, no, brilliant. I love the fact, as always, these are unscripted conversations, because I know you well, but for sure I've just got a deeper insight into some aspects of you, and I thank you for sharing. Conscious of time, gang, does anyone have any questions for Will? I think we've got time for one question for Will. Who would like to fire on their microphone? And yeah, it can be a question around anything Will's just said or we covered last week. Come on, don't be shy. Or maybe you've just covered everything comprehensively, Will. It could be. I loved your, by the way, your point about the Olympian, and I'm going to speak to that in a little while. Yeah, for sure. I was talking to in one of the sessions with Felicity Lemke, the two-time gold medalist swimmer, and for sure she talks really in some detail about the transition from being the Olympian with 2 gold medals to mum of 2, starting a new business, completely off grid from her former life, let's say, and how she dealt with that, how she handled that, and the journey that was. It's fascinating. It's a fascinating subject. But Will, thank you so much for being with us. As always, I appreciate it. I appreciate you. And I know that everyone else does. And we'll look forward to some of these MVP movement sessions being posted and the NEAT commitments, so that you can jump in on Basecamp and yeah, just offer some guidance, feedback, all those other things.
Yeah, happy to. And you guys, if you have any questions as well, feel free to hit me up in Basecamp. Even outside, I'm always happy to share my advice and share anything you guys need. Liza, thank you so much, Matt, gang. Have a good day, guys.
Thanks, Will. Take care. Have a great day.
Bye.
Thanks, Will.
And Lisa, don't worry, I will never forget Will. I'll remind him that he just called you Liza. So good. All right, let's keep going. Now, you know that just by joining this intake of Level Up, you've paid so far for 6 calls at Lifeline. And actually, you'll have the chance to double that number, but I'm going to get to that shortly. For now, let's hook into the final piece of today's masterclass, because I'm conscious that a little bit behind schedule, and that's okay. And it's to do with impactful goal setting. And I think that segues beautifully from what Will was just saying. And as the name suggests, it does what it says on the tin. And this is where you're going to need your Life Radar handy, is we're going to get you to do a breakout session which focuses on the first of your top 3 levers. So when you did the Life Radar and you've identified, roughly speaking, what are the 3 biggest levers I can pull, today you're going to get to pick one of those. I mean, logically it would be the first one, the one with the biggest opportunity behind it, but it doesn't have to be. And if you think about it, it was, if we look at that wheel there, it's not very round, and it's going to be a bit of a bumpy ride, and therefore it's one of those levers which will help to make it less of a bumpy ride. Does that all make sense so far? Give me a thumbs up. Yeah, we got a thumbs up. Cool. All right. Now, to help you in this process, this is a tried and tested cognitive behavior approach to breaking down any of the levers you identified from your Life Radar. You'll want to write these down. You've got a pen and paper, just write them down. There's only 4. But they are super powerful. And like everything else we've introduced you to on this program, it's actually a bit of a skill set that you can carry forward with you. Okay, so if you think about the number 1 lever from your Life Radar, the first step towards knowing what the first step should look like is by thinking about your goal. And Will was talking about that, as Ross did. What is it that you want to achieve with that lever in mind? And it may be create more time for you. It could be to improve a particular relationship. It could be to increase your level of contribution and leave a legacy. Whatever it is, get really clear on your specific goal for that lever. That's the first step. But okay, next, where are you now? What's your reality? That's the second piece. This requires some serious honesty just with yourselves. You're not going to be asked to share any of this. It's a very private endeavor. And that's okay. What you write down is just for your eyes, unless you want to share it. And sometimes people do want to share it, or it could be that you're prepared to share it with your accountability buddy, or maybe your significant other, whoever it is, or it could be that you don't want to. Whatever happens, just be brutally honest with yourself about the reality of where you are with that particular lever in mind. All right, next, what are your options? What can you do? Write a list. Every possible option, ranging from doing nothing to the most out there, kind of crazy, seemingly impossible option that you could ever imagine. If you stretch yourself this way, you'll be amazed at what can pop up. And finally, what's the way forward? What will really, really sort of close the gap from where you are today and for where you want to be? And again, it's for that particular lever, just that one element of your Life Radar. Now, this GROW model can be really powerful, but it requires a couple of things. 1, you actually do it. And 2, you need to use the SMART goals approach that we touched on a couple of weeks ago. And I'm just going to refresh those now. So the SMART goals, as a reminder, this is how you can goal setting stack, I guess. It's about being specific with your goals. Be really specific, make them measurable, ensure that they are attainable, i.e. that they stretch you but are not completely out of reach. They need to be relevant, of course. They need to be relevant to your objective, and they need to have a time attached to them to bring them into focus. Otherwise, the risk is that, if we don't set a time frame, things can just roll on and it doesn't happen. So if you want to, you can write those down, the SMART goals, being specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. Okay, we're going to do a quick breakout so you can have a first pass at this in relation to the very first of your Life Radar levers. Everyone happy with that? If so, give me a thumbs up. Very good. Lisa, let's make it 4 minutes. What I'm going to get you to do is, as always, nominate a timekeeper and take the first 2 minutes to write down your action plan for the first of your Life Radar levers using the GROW approach that we've just talked about. Then you'll have just 1 minute to share whatever you want to share with each other in your breakout group. and just try and be specific. What it is, it could be what are the first 3 things you can do over the next 48 hours that will start to close the gap, and by when. All right, Lisa, we're going to go for 4 minutes. If you could work your magic, here we go.
So,
Oh.
Lauren
Nice,
didn't even have a chance.
That's right. I've spoken enough today, so I'm off the hook.
Who was the timekeeper?
Timekeeper, Sinette, yeah. Is that no? Sorry, on the bus.
I mean, not to name it.
So quick to shift the blame. I'll be honest. I will admit something. I was like, because I should have been focused on the moment. I went, which one was grow? Because I was just getting smart and grow just confused. So Sinette was kind enough to re-explain that, and it's not anyone's fault but my own for not focusing. So, yeah.
Thanks for owning it, Lauren. All good. All good. Did anyone want a quick share? Did anyone, what popped out that was sort of impactful, let's say, or profound out of that so far to come back to the Life Radar? Because I'm conscious that a lot don't go back to the Life Radar because we kind of keep moving through the program, but it's so powerful as a tool. Any sort of standout insights from anyone?
I think I sort of, my one originally was self, and which is probably part of this whole program, but making sure that I've got myself in order and putting time into investing time in myself. I sort of lent back towards that again, like it wasn't about picking another one, because I think there's still a bit of work to be done in that area. But I did move across to experiences, which sort of ties a bit into self. It's more about experiences for me rather than, I seem to spend a lot of time serving others, I guess, doing everything at work, everything for the family, the kids, sporting activities and coaching and, on committees and boards, and everything seems to be always me giving for other people. So maybe just spending a bit of time, maybe organising a trip away with my mates and doing that more often. So.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, brilliant. And the Life Radar is something we recommend, and for sure, when the 3-month mark comes, you'll be hearing from us as a group to say, let's redo it as an aide memoir, because it's a bit like spinning plates, keeping them all spinning. By now zooming in and focusing on self, for example, stroke experiences, that's awesome. And you might get that totally squared away. You might go, right, you've got a couple of boys' trips organised, they're locked in, they're in the calendar, they're happening, and that becomes a thing each year. Therefore, next time you do the Life Radar, the levers change, right? So, and that's the part of the joy of it, really. It's this constant evolution. I mean, that's life, isn't it? We are all a work in progress. So that's fantastic. Thanks for sharing, Bren. Absolutely great. I guess in the spirit of that, what I'd like to do, and it's not a breakout group, what I'd like to do is just get you to think about what have been the 3, and this is really from your own perspective for you, what have been the biggest impacts from anything you've done through Level Up so far, and how that makes you feel. It's a really personal thing. There's no right or wrong. As I say, we're not going to do it as a breakout. We're just going to stay in this main session. I'll put a bit of music on. But if you just write down the top 3 things that you've maybe introduced, reintroduced, whatever it could be, into your life, it's a great way of deepening the learning and reinforcing the behaviors. And it might be that there's a ripple effect already. Something you started doing is now having a ripple effect to those around you. So I'll stop talking. And we'll have a couple more minutes. right. How's everyone doing? Now, what I'd love to do is hear from each of you, and maybe you just share the number one, the biggest, what it's been, and how, really importantly, how it made you feel. And this is a little bit in the spirit of going to bed at night and what are the three things I'm grateful for from today. It's a little bit the same as what are the mini wins in the last day or week, and really celebrating them. It's the same thing. It helps to reinforce and embed those learnings and those behaviors, and when we attach it to how we feel, because it feels positive and good, it's even more powerful. So who'd like to kick off with a share?
Yeah, I can if you like.
Thanks, Brendan.
I think probably the biggest thing for me is having a renewed sense of clarity and focus, and that's been achieved by all the tools that you've sort of taught us in relation to, you know, getting rid of the clutter and eliminating certain things in your life that you've realised are actually a waste of time, and really focusing on those things and going, yeah, I don't really need that. Why do I do that? And giving you that sort of clarity, which gives you time to think and reflect on what you are doing well and what you're doing not so well in whether it's business life or family, and being able to have that spare time to focus on plans around how to achieve better in those areas. So that's probably my number one. Yeah, clarity and focus.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Brendan. I'm really pleased that that's the case. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, it's good. Like it's good in one way, but I think being clouded sometimes is also you just sort of head down doing stuff, doing life. But I think sometimes that can be good because you don't get concerned with certain things. I think when you start to think about the future, it can scare you sometimes, depending on what you're thinking about. Where is your life headed? Where are you going? What are your real goals? When you talk about your sense of purpose, realizing I don't really have one was a bit confronting. You know, it's so working out if you don't have one, why don't you have one, and what is why are you doing what you're doing every day? So, I mean, obviously you've got business goals and those sorts of things, but they're a little bit different to, I think, what you're trying to get through. So that was sort of a little bit confronting, but in the same way rewarding, because it allows you to sit back and think about what it is that you're trying to achieve in life and where you want to be. So I think it's been quite good.
I appreciate a very candid share, and I can relate. I remember the first time that I was posed the question, what's your purpose? What's it all about? I couldn't answer the question. I was just busy, as you said, doing life. And yeah, even for sure, it's a work in progress for me too. It's sometimes I just have to sit and reset a bit and think about, okay, bring it back to basics and remember what I think my current purpose is, and get clear about that. And you're right, it's human nature to avoid things that are painful or hurt or are difficult or hard. And that's why often we make ourselves busy. That's why the 3 o'clock gremlin is so much louder and more intense than the same gremlin at 9 o'clock the next morning. That's why, because during the day we have these distractions and we allow them. And sometimes that's not a bad thing. But at some stage, coming back to that, all right, time out. What's it all about? What drives me? What motivates me? What makes me happy? How much fun am I having? Yeah, no, brilliant. I appreciate you sharing very much. And I'm glad that, yeah, that so far is your, the outcome of your involvement so far. Brilliant. It's just the beginning. Who else would like to have a share? I should ask a different way. Who'd like to go next?
I'll chip in. I'll say not two things, but number one, the disconnection from the news website for me has been massive. Right, I'm still not doing it at home per se, but it's I'm finding a more purposeful engagement online. I'm not sitting there reading crud. I'm actually doing what is going to end up with something better. Like just answering my emails or getting on with some work. And more recently, I guess the last week's discussion was the big meals before bed. I didn't realize how much of a difference that would make. Combine that with a power down, I'm finding it much easier to wake up earlier, and that time in the morning now I'm using to move on top of my runs. I'm doing some other stuff as well, and it's given me the time to find some peace, I guess, breathing in the morning too. Combine all of that together, it's been great, and that's only the past week, so it's been my biggest week so far.
That's awesome, Derek. Absolutely awesome. Thank you. Have a virtual hug. I couldn't be happier that those are those are the realities. And as you say, it's only a week. It's 4 weeks, but a week with the power down routine and thinking about that connection between when and what we're eating and how it impacts our sleep and so on. That's awesome, awesome. And it's funny, isn't it? When you say them in isolation, they none of them feel like they're massive steps, right? Well, I'm just not looking at a particular website when I'm at home. But they can feel massive. They feel big at the time because they're an ingrained part of our life, sometimes mostly unthinkingly. So to break those habits and those muscle memories can feel pretty big. So, I mean, yeah, celebrate those. Awesome. And the best motivation in the world is those emotions and those realizations for you and the rest of us. They're what motivate us to keep going and to maintain those new habits and develop and evolve those new habits. So yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Who'd like to go next?
It's just, yeah, building on everything, like you said, the small steps that we take, how much of it draws back actually the control, and then the mind is calmer and that takes down the stress and everything levels out a bit when you take away the clutter. And yeah, I think it's really, the big point for me is small differences can make a big impact because it's just a flow-on effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful, Sinead. And I'm glad that we called the program Level Up, therefore, because it seems to be exactly the outcome for you. So thank you. How about Lauren? Lauren, would you like to share?
It's funny. I had exactly the same as Brendan, clarity and focus, but I guess you could say the best analogy for it, it's like at the moment driving through roadworks, and so there's so much dirt and everything built up on our windscreen, and the impact project's been like the windscreen wiper to really get rid of that, being able to actually be visible now to what you may have been oblivious to before. So it's really been like a windscreen wiper, getting clarity. I feel I actually, before I started this, was considering going on medication for my focus, because I furry or shiny things, my attention's gone. I've noticed such a strong impact on my reduced distractions in that sense, and also the discipline of habit formation. So I'm still not on social media, just like Derek mentioned about the news websites. The benefits have heavily outweighed the pros have outweighed the cons, and so it's almost like a compounding effect that Sinead described. All these little things are actually becoming a compounding effect in life changes. So I do appreciate what you've done in this, Matt, and I've gained a hell of a lot out of it. So thank you.
Oh, no, awesome. Well, I appreciate it. And at the end of the day, you've done the heavy lifting, you've done the work, you've leaned in, you've engaged, and I appreciate you sharing so candidly. And actually, what we've just done by having a bit of a share like that, we all take away a little bit of something from each other's learnings as well, and could probably relate to them and go, oh yeah, I could have said the same thing, and so on. It just helps to embed that. So I appreciate that, as with everyone else, those have been your experiences so far, and that's awesome. So thank you, Lauren. In the interest of time, now, I mentioned earlier that we have paid so far this intake 6 calls at Lifeline. And the next phase of the program is in 2 parts. The first is, you may have picked up on or not, but part of the Level Up program includes a one-to-one coaching session with me online, of course. And Lisa is going to pop the private link in the chat, but she'll also pop it into Basecamp as well, so don't stress if you don't grab it right now. Now, in the spirit of being action takers, the window for these coaching calls is limited, and it's done so deliberately. We want you to maintain the momentum you've created. So when you click on that link, you'll see that there are lots of options for booking your call, but they're all in the next week, by the end of next week, let's say. 45 minutes. And here's the thing, for every coaching call I complete with each of you, we'll match it with another call at Lifeline. So if you'll hook in, we can double the number of calls you've already paid for. And actually, don't forget that if you didn't get the chance to do your MVP movement session, I've extended that by a week. So actually we can theoretically, well, we won't triple, but we'll be able to add even more calls to that. So it's a bit of a no-brainer. And the coaching calls will take what you've done today, but we'll also dive deeper into fleshing out your approach to goal stacking. And this is something we spend quite a lot of time on in the Unleashing Potential program, but we'll cover the basics in your coaching call. So yeah, make sure you book your session in. It's a no-brainer. You pay for a call at Lifeline and there's no downside. The other really important part of your program is next Tuesday evening. It's sort of late afternoon, evening. It's your bonus live Q&A session. It kicks off at 6 p.m. And it's entirely exclusive to you, to all of the previous intakes and this intake. We have one of our celebrity coaches next Tuesday, and who is it? Well, you'll have to wait and see. We'll probably tell you before then, but it's a bit of a surprise. But I can tell you, though, she may have a couple of gold medals from the Olympics up her sleeve. Now, a word of warning, these Q&A sessions, like next Tuesday, they are not recorded. Unlike all of these masterclasses, they're not recorded. And we do that in the spirit of creating time for what matters most in life. So make it a non-negotiable session and join us live. And honestly, get your family or friends involved too. If they want to sort of jump in with you, no problem. The more the merrier. Share the experience. When it's not every day that you get access to these sort of elite athletes, and certainly this particular one is going to be sharing how she juggles her life and her approach to mindset and recovery too as well. And finally, feedback is our fuel. Now, this photograph shows you a cracking little product that you may have seen in Basecamp somewhere around. And some people may have used them if they were doing their MVP sessions last week. It's a little Timebirds timer. Actually, it's a side business that Ross Hastings is involved in because he has a love of all things functional fitness. And so he and 3 other guys created a Timebird timer. We love them. And here's the deal. If you take 3 minutes or less required to complete our online feedback questions, and really feedback is fuel, and it's your chance to be totally honest and tell us what you loved, what you didn't love about the program, then you go into the draw to one of these little suckers. They're 180 bucks, and one of you will win one of these. So we'll even throw in a protective case as well, because they're just a great bit of kit. So Lisa's going to put the link in Basecamp as well for the feedback. She might pop it in the chat, but it'll definitely be in Basecamp. But my advice is, and I'd love you, yeah, so there you go, brilliant. That link's gone into the chat. I'd love you to complete it today if you can, because it's fresh in your mind. I think we've had enough examples where we go, oh yeah, I'll do that later, and then life takes over. So would be eternally grateful, because we really do appreciate the feedback. All right, now there is some homework for your final week, and as we know, peak performance is an infinite game. I appreciate you all getting a board level up and encourage you to stay gritty about your new lifestyle behaviors and working towards your goals. With that said, your homework is super simple. Number 1, forget pre-Christmas. Book your coaching call with me. 2, complete the feedback questionnaire, which we've just talked about. And number 3 is simply to stay gritty. Get gritty, stay gritty, and get after your goals. All right. I look forward to you all meeting an absolute legend next Tuesday. It's at 6 p.m. And with that said, no more slide deck. Yeah, how are we doing for time? Look at that, 9:59. I'm pleased. As always, we are not in a hurry to get away. Lisa and I are happy to stay on. Otherwise, if you do need to scoot off, it's just turned 10 o'clock. If you need to scoot off, thank you so much for being here. It's not the end, because we're going to have a coaching call and we've got the live Q&A session next Tuesday. But thank you so far. And yeah, does anyone have anything they want to share? Got any questions? Anything at all?
Thanks so much, Matt. I do have to head off, but I appreciate what you've done, and Lisa, what she's contributed to. It's really been a very beneficial obviously looking forward to continuing with being gritty. So thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Lovely. Thanks, Lauren. Have a great day. Thank you.
You too.
Thanks
Bye.
for playing.
Yeah, thanks again, Matt. Appreciate everything with this session. I can't, I'm not going to be able to make next week, unfortunately. I'm away at a conference, so I'll send my apologies now. But thank you for everything.
Understood.
The last few weeks, it's been sensational. We've definitely learned a lot, so appreciate everything.
No, thanks, Brendan. Appreciate you playing and leaning in. And this is just the beginning for you in particular. So appreciate you getting involved. And I'll give you a shout outside of this session to follow up.
All right. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Brendan.
Thank you, Matt. And Lisa?
No problem. Lisa, we can probably, Lisa, we can stop recording if you like.
Yeah.
Yeah.